You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is September 4th, 2024, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. And today we have a special show. We've been kind of talking it up for the last month or so, and it's about a celebration that's coming up locally in Folsom in a week, and it's Constitution Day. And we have two of the organizers here with us to tell us all about it, and that's Mark and Michelle LeMay. So we're going to get into the show and talk about that. But before we do, let me introduce you to the rest of the panel. In our middle box, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower right-hand box, we have Mark and Michelle LeMay, and they are organizers of the Constitution Day event in Folsom this year. And my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So before we get into talking about the event, we always like to kick off with a Liberty quote. And this time, this Liberty quote was provided to us by our guests. And it looks like it's also tied into the event as well. So it's a perfect quote. And maybe our invisible hand can bring this up. So this is a quote from Albert Einstein. So believe it or not, he was apparently a big believer in the Constitution. And he said, "The strength of the Constitution lies entirely in the determination of each citizen to defend it. Only if every single citizen feels duty-bound to do his share in this defense are the constitutional rights secure." So we're going to talk a lot about the Constitution in the rest of the show, but I thought that was a great quote. And the fact that I don't know that every single person has to fight, but I mean, everybody should be. And certainly we need to do our most. What do you guys think about this quote? I mean, I think it's awesome that a guy who was sitting around thinking about relativity and getting Nobel Prizes in physics was actually worried about our Constitution as well.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, huh?
Well, yeah, because Albert Einstein, he caught a lot of flack because remember where he came from, Nazi Germany.
Yes.
And again, the Germans really hounded him, and he was over here in America, and he was basically saying, thank goodness for a Constitution, that he could be here. So yeah, it's like he was a big proponent of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Well, and I would give a little caveat to the end. Is he talked about our constitutional rights, but he probably didn't have enough room to put in there that we get our rights from God, and the Constitution is something that protects and secures them. So, but I know we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Indeed.
Yeah. It's funny, when I was actually searching for a quote, I was actually trying to find one that specifically mentioned that, hey, look, our rights don't really come from government. That's what I was searching for. Then I saw your guys' quote. Hey, this is an awesome quote. Go ahead, Leon.
No, I mean, I think Albert Einstein is correct that about every citizen should fight to keep this, I know the Democrats tried to say it's just a piece of paper, to keep this thing going. Because we all have to agree on a certain set of standards by which we will live. Because if we don't have those standards as laid out in the Constitution, then we are talking about chaos in our society. So it's very important that we have something that we could all agree on. Now, we may disagree on certain interpretations. That's what we have the Supreme Court for. Sometimes they get it wrong, sometimes they get it right. But we have to have standards. So it's very important that all citizens adhere to those standards. And if we don't like it, we can change it. It's also provided for in the Constitution. So I think he's very correct in saying that every citizen should at least agree on the standards, and we should go from there.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you guys are having a day to celebrate this important document, because a lot of places in the world, like you were mentioning, Nazi Germany, they're whatever they were using for Constitution, it doesn't look like it was working very well, because they really trampled over the rights of a lot of their citizens. So you guys have this event. It's coming up on, and James, maybe we could bring back the visual again. This is coming up on September 15th. This is about a week and a half from when we're doing the show here, and it's going to be on a Sunday from noon to 4. And so, you can go and you can register it. You can check out. There's an agenda out there as well, so you can see kind of what's going on, and you guys have a web page as well too. So there's all kinds of stuff to check out. And so you want to tell us a little bit about the event and what it is that? Let me show real quick where it is too, so anybody who's watching can kind of get a sense. So we're in Sacramento, California, and Folsom is just sort of to the northeast up here, and so it's a little bit before you get to Folsom Lake, and there's a more close-up map as well. So if you're familiar with that area, you can kind of see what some of the things are going to be offered there. So anyways, now that we kind of know where it's at, tell us a little bit about it. Well, what's the event going to be like?
Do you want to kind of, because we're not the ones that came up with the idea of having Constitution Day. There's actually some interesting history when it comes to that.
Yeah. So I was going to tell you a little bit of history about the Constitution Day, because, I mean, our Constitution basically started back in September 17th of 1787. So this is our 237th year celebrating the Constitution. And a lot of times people will say, well, yeah, Constitution is just a piece of paper. No, gang. That is our contract with the U.S. government to tell them this. Okay, we got our rights from God. Now we're going to write this down here, and we're going to give you some enumerated, rights that we're going to kind of give to you, so that you can, 6 to the president and 9 to the Supreme Court and 19 or 18 to the, Congress. And this is what you can do, and the rest of it goes to the states or to us. Okay, so this is our contract between them. And again, this was the first contract any government ever had with their government. We were actually telling them what to do, not the other way around. And this is just an amazing document. It's the longest contract out there. And of course, they don't like the contract anymore. They want to change the contract, you delete the contract, pretend the contract's not there anymore. But every state has got a constitution, a contract. So we have federal contract, we have a state contract. We got 50 of them. So that started back in 1787. And then, of course, the Bill of Rights was enacted in 1791. And then get this, all the way until 1952, Congress passes the Constitution Day Act for all public schools. That was back in 1952. But it actually didn't go into effect, or they actually started doing anything about it, until 2004. That's when they said, okay, everybody in the public schools and all your federal funded, entities, you have to start teaching the Constitution to the kids and to the employees. And it's up to them to do it. Do they do it? I don't know. I have no idea. I've looked into some of this stuff, and it's kind of vague what they do. But in 1940, Congress passes the I Am an American Day. That was in 1940. That was basically kind of celebrate people that were becoming new Americans and doing that. And then 1952, of course, that's when they have basically the Department of Education was also established in 1952. And so there's a lot of things happened back then at that exact same time. But they also passed the Constitution Day Act in that time. And then they started enacting in 2004. And it was just interesting, because if you go back and you take a look, like, I've been in Sacramento since 1990. I have never seen a Constitution Day celebration. It wasn't until last year that our group said, hey, you know what? Here we are in the capital of California, and we don't even celebrate the Constitution. What's going on here? So we decided, let's do it. So we started that last year, and this is our second annual, and it's going to be even better than last year. I mean, we got a great amount of speakers coming to talk. We'll talk about those guys in a little bit here. We got, the different people that are going to be playing music, food trucks for food, bounce house. I mean, we got over like about 25 or so, people that are going to be businesses participating and having booths there. So there's going to be all kinds of different things there to just make it more like a family fun event. It's going to be really nice from like noon to 4 o'clock.
So why do you guys believe it's important to celebrate this day then? Why?
Ooh, that is a big question. And if you don't mind.
Nope, go ahead. I'd like to hear this.
If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh, yeah, I was not a big history buff. I know you got straight A's in school and absolutely loved history. Me, it was just boring. It wasn't relatable. I didn't feel like it had anything to do with me. So 5 years ago, not really interested in that, just being a regular person. But when the shenanigans started in 2020.
You mean the big lie?
Yeah, the big, yeah.
That's what I call it, the big lie.
Yep. Things were happening that just in our guts just didn't feel right. And coming from not just a common sense, logical perspective, but from Mark's a doctor, and he knows how the body works, how the immune system works, and how bugs and things work, and how tiny and all that stuff. Anyway, we're
how viruses work.
Yeah. And it's just like, they're going about this all wrong. So that kind of started our journey. And we didn't learn about the Constitution discussion group until like October of 2021.
Yeah. So that was kind of a journey to find this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were watching a lot of Peggy Hall's videos. She started The Healthy American, and all kinds of information about law and the difference between what a law is and what a mandate is, and differences between things that are legal and lawful. And I'm like, what is this new information? And for me, that's kind of like, you had asked earlier about, what made our Liberty Bell ring to get involved in all of this. And that was, this hogwash that happened to all of us in 2020.
So basically, to answer your question, Leanne, why is this important to us? Mm-hmm. Because we don't know what we can do. Most Americans are totally clueless as to, okay, here are your rights in the Constitution, and again, these rights were given to us from God. And again, we just basically, we haven't been taught any of this. So it's like, how can you defend something you don't even know about? So it's important to us, because when we started learning this, we're like, so we don't have to petition the government. We can actually give them notices and tell them, hey, this is your contract right here. Here's what you're supposed to be doing. You can't do this. Okay. You need to go back over here and do this and stop doing this because you're outside your bounds. And if you don't do it, this is the consequences. We can tell our government what to do. Okay, we have a redress of grievances. We can do that. And then it goes into like affidavits, which is, again, more of like the legal portion of it. So, yeah, that's why it's important to us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I had a question too, and something you said. By the way, you did mention the Constitution discussion class, and we'll get into that group later in the show. So we'll spend a little more time on that as well, because that certainly was important, and I've attended that as well. So I think it's great what you guys are doing there. But I did want to ask you too. You mentioned you were a doctor, and during this time, did you see? Did you feel the oppressive veil coming down over you of that you can't talk about things that you're not allowed to talk about? Because we saw quite a few doctors online who tried to get, express skepticism, and there was talk about taking their licenses away from them. So I'm just curious if you guys experienced any of those sorts of pressures as well.
Well, I can tell you that when this all came down back in March of 2020, I mean, it was like, I just kept on looking around like, it's a virus, you guys. What's the big deal here? At first I'm thinking, well, maybe if it's a manufactured one, that could be pretty lethal and deadly, But then when they started talking about slow the curve and do this stuff and start, as soon as they started from that point and started going, no, we got a mask and we got to keep it going. And I'm like, that's all wrong. It's like, we got to get everybody out of it. It's like, wait a second here. We mean for the last 200 years, we've been sequestering the sick, and then everybody else can go move around and do what they're supposed to do. But now we're going to totally change that, and we're going to add all these other like man-made rules in here. I was just thinking to myself, this makes no sense from a standpoint of virology, none. And I'm like going, there is something really wrong here. And then can they really do this? And I had no idea. Could they really do this? Because I didn't know my rights that well. So I was just going along the assumption. It's like, hey, they're saying that, because I'm just, everybody knows, I'm not a medical doctor. Okay, not a medical doctor here. Okay, I am a chiropractor and a functional nutrition. I've been that for over 33 years. But I see patients for all kinds of things. And people were super scared because they didn't know. They were just totally ignorant on what bacteria and viruses can and cannot do. Again, it's like, viruses and bacteria are ubiquitous. I mean, it's like, I would tell people, it's like, if you put on a mask, it's like taking a chain link fence and me throwing sand against that chain link fence. Some is going to bounce back, but the vast majority is going through. That's your mask for a virus. Now, if it's bacteria, it's different. Okay, it's totally different. But a virus, no chance. So, and then when they're closing out, like, I'm essential and you're not essential, where do you get that? Everybody is essential. Nobody is not essential. Everybody is. Okay, so that was like, our hogwash meters are going off like crazy, and we're just like, there is something wrong here, and we got to figure out how can we become better at showing people and educating people on this, because we need to educate ourselves first, but then we need to turn around and teach this to everybody else. So this does not happen ever again.
Yeah. What's funny too, you mentioned essential workers, and given the fact that our quote of the day was from Einstein, he was coming from a place where the government started telling people, hey, you're essential and you're not essential. And we saw what happened to people, when the government starts putting labels on people like that. So it's just really, some horrible level stuff. And the crazy thing is that so many people, it just went right over their heads. I just, I don't know. But yeah,
well, I think we know history has well informed us that whenever the government is making choices about winners and losers, it always end up being a losing proposition for us, the citizens. And this is what was happening during COVID. They were choosing who was essential and who was not, essentially choosing winners and losers. And look what happened.
Yeah, like Walmart is essential, but your local store is not essential.
Yes, Walmart is essential, but mom and pop is not. I used to go to Costco all the time during COVID, but I couldn't go to my favorite restaurant, which was a Thai food restaurant just down the street from me. So, but government was making choices between the essential and the non-essential, picking winners and losers, and that is always a losing proposition. And that is exactly what we saw during COVID.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. So we knew something was going on, but we just, like most people, didn't know where to find the answers.
Yeah, we were on a trek to learn what is really our, rights, our God-given, our unalienable rights. And it's one of the things that when people hear that word in the Constitution, they always say it incorrectly. It's our inalienable rights or whatever. And it's like, and in the classes that we've taken, I've learned that it's called unalienable. Okay, somebody has a lien against you, Jason. What does that mean?
I mean, it means that
they have a lien against you. They've got something where you you owe them something. Like they got you. They got a lien on you, and you can't get it off. Okay, so if you're unalienable, what does that mean? They can't touch this. So our rights are not touchable by the government. So that's when we're going, oh my gosh. Where did we miss out on this? It's like, so we didn't learn the Constitution when we're growing up, and our God-given unalienable rights and all these things that government can and cannot do according to their contract. And that made a huge difference. Wow.
And how much power the people have. Everybody felt so powerless, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's where these discussion groups really help.
So when somebody would say something to us now, I would say, so by what authority are you doing this?
Yeah,
and they'll just look at you like, huh? Because I remember going in stores and people are like, you can't be here without a mask. And I said, are you a medical doctor? No. Are you the on-site manager for this entire facility? No. So then you can't be talking to me about this right now. You don't have the authority.
Yeah. Yeah,
And they
essentially
just
the
look at me like,
authority
oh,
was
well, I'm going to go get the manager. I'm like, I can't wait for you to do that. Go get the manager.
yeah. Well, essentially the
Because
authority
I've already
just
talked to
became
the
what
manager
was-
and we've already got the plan.
Yeah. Well, it seems like
It was great. I got all the
authority-
managers on my side.
Well, it seems like essentially the authority just
Yeah.
became because Commandant Cuomo or Commandant Newsom said so.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Correct.
Oh,
But
Yeah.
they only have authority over their federal and state employees. That's it. I mean, the state employees that they have authority over. They don't have authority over us.
Yeah. and yet
We
we
the
saw
people.
people being arrested for just surfing by themselves or running down the
Yes.
beach. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. But
Right.
if those people pushed it and went to court and stuff like that, they got off because there was no law.
Well,
Yeah, law, no
while
crime.
we're still in the first part of the show, I want to go through more of the Constitution Day event, and then we can talk a little bit more about the Constitution class discussion group and some of what rolls out of that. But right now, so people who are watching can get a full flavor of this. So I'm bringing up the Constitution Day event. Now, let's see, this is the one from the previous year, your first one. And this, let's see, where is the one?
Last
Here
year.
is
That
the
was
one
last
from-
year's.
Okay. And so let's see, where is the schedule? I'm trying to, well, I do have the schedule on the eBrite, and so it does
Yep,
list
that's this
some of the
year's.
music. Yeah. And so here's some of the stuff. So I didn't know if you wanted to tell us a little bit about, what some of the highlights are going to be, for the listeners out there.
Oh, yeah. We have got some great speakers lined up. We've got some incredible musicians.
Playing too. Yeah.
Yes. And so a lot of people might look at that and say, oh, well, I'll just come at a certain time and stay for a little bit. No, you're going to want to be there at noon and stay until 4 p.m. because the way it's laid out is we will have Jack Frost as the MC welcoming and introducing people. We'll start off with a little bit of music. And then after about 20 minutes, we'll get our first speaker. And that's, as you can see, it's going to be Matthew Oliver from House of Oliver. And he is, if anybody knows anybody about him, he's very outspoken and also was one of those freedom fighters back in 2020 fighting to keep his restaurant open back then. So you're going to hear him talk about the Constitution and fighting for our rights. So he's very passionate, and you're gonna get a great flavor of that. And then a little bit of music interlude. So this way people can go around and visit the different booths. See the vendors, go get some gyros or a sandwich at the food trucks. There's going to be some homemade baked goods at one of the vendor booths. So there's going to be lots of good food to eat. There's a bouncy house for the kids. And
There's going to be numerous games and stuff that kids can play at different booths and stuff like that too. And there's also going to be, we're going to be giving out at the Constitution Days discussion group thing. We're going to be giving out bags with constitutions in there for the kids and like little bracelets and just a bunch of little fun stuff. So we have, I think some are like over 100 bags of these to give out to kids and stuff like that. We did that last year and it went out really well. So it's just some educational material for the kids, and also I think we'll have constitutions there for the adults too if they want to get their own personal constitution.
yeah, a little pocket constitution, which is great.
So as
Yeah.
we're talking about this, we want people to get one and then hopefully get inspired to come to some of our classes, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here too.
It's kind of funny too when you talk about handing out the Constitution so people can be a little more familiar with their rights. I remember sometime around the I can't remember whether it was just before or after lockdowns. I went to see Penn and Teller in Vegas, and one of the things they had was this little metal plate that was like a miniature Constitution. I'm not sure. I think it was a Bill of Rights actually is what it had on it. And so, but what they were the reason they made it metal is so that they would walk through a metal detector brazenly with it, knowing it would set it off, and then say, "What's your authority for?"
Wow, that is pretty brazen. Yeah, it says
so I
right
thought
here
that
in the
was
Bill
kind
of Rights that you can't do that.
That's great.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, we should try that. We should try
Yeah.
that. Really should.
Well, and again, it's going to be fun because we're talking about the Constitution. It's like we have one of the speakers that's going to be there is Dean Foreman. He's the founder of John Adams Academy, and over here in Roseville. He has a PhD in constitutional law and philosophy, and he's from George Wythe College University.
Wythe.
I think it's Wythe College.
Sorry.
And it's like it's a very famous constitutional university that basically trains a lot of really good people that have to do. They know they're founded and grounded in the Constitution and what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do. And he's going to be our second speaker for the day on that. And then we're also going to have Enoch Moore is going to be there from Defending Utah. He basically has been in this fight since 2013 because he knows that over where he's in Utah, they've been having a lot of problems with their government over there too. And he's been trying to get rid of all these different shills and, politicians that are just trying to take away their freedom. So he's like, we ain't going for this. So that's one of them. And then, of course, we get to have Sue Frost, our very own Sue Frost, who is currently serving Sac County Board of Supervisors for District 4. And I know her, and I've seen her ever since she used to be, at the Citrus Heights, City of Citrus Heights. I met her back in like 2012 when she first started, and I recognized right off the bat that when I saw her and the way she was talking about things, it's like, this lady knows business, and this lady knows, the right principles about how things are supposed to be run. And she had and she would get shot down all the time by the city. And I would go over and talk to her and say, hey, Sue, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. She goes, really? Really? Because everybody else doesn't like me. And I'm like, because you're pointing out their problem. That's why, because you're showing them you're not supposed to be doing this and they're doing it. So you're doing the right thing. So she's going to be there, and she's also going to be speaking about the Constitution, which I can't wait to hear what she has to say again this year too.
It sounds like she's one of the few I was going to say, it sounds like she's one of the few, I guess, council members who are actually skeptical, I guess, of what some of the things the government was doing back in those lockdown days, I guess. So, yeah. Well, we're at that point in the show where if you're on public access, we're going to have to break away, but you can catch the rest of the discussion online. So you can go check us out there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what the Constitution discussion group is, and also the We the People group. That's sort of another part of them that goes out and actually petitions government. So they bring these concerns to government. And so it's not just about doing nothing, it's literally ways that you can actually take action as well. But you can go check that out and see if that's for you. Anyways, back to the show.
Yeah, I was going to say the reason why you want to get there at noon and stay till 4 is because of the way it's structured. You've got some music, then you've got a speaker. You've got some music, you've got a speaker. So that's going to be staggered throughout that whole period. And that will give you time to hear all the different passionate speakers and get a chance. You can see some of the booths there from last year. You got Sue Frost in the middle there. And it's just going to be a great, fun, free. It's a free event. If you go to our Eventbrite, all the free tickets are kind of gobbled up. But we've got room for probably 200 plus people. So there's going to be lots of room. It will probably be a very warm day.
Like last year.
But thanks to all the vendors with their little pop-up tents, and there's a couple of really big shade trees, we're going to have seating with a double pop-up tent. So when you're sitting there listening to the speakers, you will have lots of shade. So we got you covered.
Yeah, we got you covered there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was a bad pun. Sorry. Got you covered.
Okay.
Looks like you guys have a lot of support from a lot of groups that are pro-liberty groups out there as well. So these are some of the groups that look like they're on the website there. So certainly.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point. This is a nonpartisan event. This is a nonpartisan discussion group. So we're not talking parties or anything like that. We're just talking founding documents, founding the principles. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, it's like it doesn't matter. we got all kinds of people in our group, and it's good because we want that. I mean, the the founders of our country, they knew that they had to please a large group of people here. I mean, you had Muslims and, Hebrew and Christians and you name it, and people that didn't believe in God. They had all these different, factions there. You have to make it so that everybody gets treated equally, no matter what. They wanted a constitution, a contract that would treat everybody equally, because again, we are all men are created equally. So that's why we wanted to make sure that when we have this group too, we want people to come to it because we want them to, number one, learn those principles, and then we can take that information and apply it, and again, tell our people in government, whether it be local, state, federal, here's your contract. Are you going to uphold your contract? Are you going to follow your contract? Because this is what we're seeing, and that's why we're writing this down and we're telling you this. And then if you don't, you've got 15 days to correct this. Otherwise, here's your penalties. And so that's, it gets people's attention when you tell them things like that, because they were like, huh, what? And you've probably seen some of the stuff that we've done at the, some of our members have done at the Board of Supervisors. I mean, if you've watched any of the ones from previous, you can see like Debbie Red Hat and Sandra and all that getting up there and talking to the board and telling them, hey, we're telling you this in the love of Jesus Christ, that this, we just want you to know that, we're not yelling at you. We're saying, pay attention, okay? Because you guys are not doing your job, and we know that.
Yeah.
When what?
Sorry. Go ahead.
When the founders wrote this constitution, this great document, they intended, as far as I can tell, that the government shall only have certain activities or certain powers and authorities in which they will engage. But I think in 2024, almost 50 years after that document was ratified, I think the government have gone way, especially the federal government, have gone way outside the intent of the founders, way outside the authorities listed in the Constitution. And some of us, I think many citizens are looking at, have this feeling within them that we are sitting on the Titanic and this big iceberg is sitting out there and we're just creeping towards it. So the question then becomes, how do we get some power to turn the Titanic away from that iceberg, to get the government, especially the federal government, back into the box that the founders intended? How do we go about that?
That is a great question.
Well, again, it's like, remember the Titanic, and I'm not going to get too technical here, but when you're steering a ship, there's something called a trim tab on a ship. It's this little tiny device that just kind of turns the rudder to the right or left just a little bit. I mean, you can take this big, huge, ship like the Titanic, and a guy at the top of the thing can just turn this little thing like this, and he can turn the ship with the trim tab. And again, it's just like, so you think it's okay, so what's the trim tab for, our country, and as far as controlling the government, what is it? It's the Constitution. The Constitution is our trim tab. It's what tells them what they can and cannot do. And over time, you're right, Leon, over time, because how many amendments do we have to our Constitution? 27. Okay, the first 10 are the Bill of Rights, but then we have 17 more since then. Some of the worst ones that we have are the 16th and 17th Amendment, which created back in 1913.
Before you go too much farther, James, can you bring this up? Because just so our audience can see it. So here is, so it's not too abstract for everybody. There's a website here, archives.gov, founding docs, but there's a whole bunch of other places you can go to find the Constitution as well out there. But the Constitution is not that, nothing to be that scared about, trying to read it. It's really not that long of a document here. It's only got so many articles there. And then we've got the Bill of Rights that was added on because these were things that it's not just about how the government functions, but hey, we want to make sure that people's individual liberties are protected too, because some of that maybe isn't quite spelled out in the Constitution. And so we're saying, hey, these are definitely some rights we don't want you trampling of people's rights. And then so there you can see, from amendments 1 through 10 there, which is the Bill of Rights, and the most important of which is freedom of speech. But then here we have another that goes through all the amendments, because there's been a lot more amendments since that original Bill of Rights that came out with the Constitution. And let me jump to the 16th so I can hand it back to you, Mark, about what it was. Income tax. Oh, okay.
I don't know if we want to open that can of worms right now, but
so just so you know, that's when they created the infamous IRS got life breathed back into it, and income tax. And then there's also the 17th Amendment of taking the popular election of senators. I mean, our founding fathers knew that one of the ways to protect freedom for the states, especially, is the senators were chosen by the state legislature, not by popular vote. But somebody knew that if we can get that wrestled out of the hands of the state and get it back into the hands of, a general election, that you would get more power going to the federal government. And so, again, over time, things have just been chipping away at our, I guess you could say it's just the federal government has just gotten larger and larger and more power because of amendments and other changes that they've done in laws and wording of certain things in amendments and laws too. So it's been a slow creep, Leon, over time. That ship was on course, and now it's going way off course because they got control of the turntail.
Well, what strikes me, too, is that the first 10 were to ensure individual rights, were to ensure that the government didn't get ahead of itself. And as we look at some of these others, it's actually trying to give the government more rights and take away our individual rights. Like you look here at the 18th Amendment was the prohibition of liquor. And then eventually they had a new amendment to repeal the prohibition, which so clearly they don't always get it right. But it is kind of interesting that they're taking away some of those rights.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, but and they created the amendment process so that things change and they would have the flexibility to, but not being so flexible that it's just with the blow of the wind making changes willy-nilly.
Well, and again, an amendment. The purpose, I believe, that the founding fathers wanted is to say, they said, we have to be able to allow for the people to make decisions on things. And how they kind of put it is like, is this amendment going to give the people more rights, or is it going to give them less rights? And if it's giving them more rights, then it's going to be probably something good. But if it's taking away their rights, that would be bad. So we always talk about people, it's like, it's not left or right, it's right or wrong. Is this right or is it wrong? And again, today we've got so much wrong going on here. It's to the point people are like, what do we do? And that's why we come in here and start changing.
This would be a good segue before we jump into the Constitution discussion group to just kind of let people know, because like you say, so much is going wrong, or so much is happening too, because maybe not everybody necessarily thinks it's wrong, but it's happening, and it's all around this Constitution, this document called the Constitution. So James, maybe you could bring up the visual here, and I'll just go through a few headlines. So here's a headline from this year. In fact, it was just from a few weeks ago that said, new bill would revive the right to sue federal cops for constitutional violations. And here we have another story here from Reason as well. This is just a couple weeks ago as well. It says neither Harris or her party perceives any constitutional constraint on gun control. And it talks about how they never mention the Second Amendment, but mention all the things they want to do to constrain your rights. And then on gun control, or rather on the rights to own firearms, rather. Then here's an article from NPR, and it talks about the Roe versus Wade, which happened just a couple years ago, ago where that was overturned by the Supreme Court. So certainly big implications on our rights to big implications on the right to life issues. And one of the big issues too is the Commerce Clause, and that's one of those things that I think that even got tied into the abortion argument a little bit, where people were talking around that. But there's an interesting case around that called Wickford versus Filburn, and in that, essentially, it says that anything that's related to commerce, the government can come in and essentially manage your life. And in that particular case, there was a farmer who decided not to sell something on the market, and the government said, well, if you do that, you're going to affect commerce. so therefore, we can come in and force you to put that on the market because what you're doing is, is against the laws. So, these are big things. And of course, the most recent thing too, one of the most recent things is we have a president who some people are speculating that we should exercise the 25th Amendment. And so I thought I might bring up. Well, in fact, it's funny. I do have a video that we used on a prior show, and I think it might be worth showing that just because, this is a guy who was in charge of a lot of our lockdown policy as well. So, James, can you bring up KOL number 1?
Start your tape right now because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
Well, I couldn't help but not show that. But that is a constitutional issue, believe it or not, that it's possible somebody could be exercising that. Because despite what Joe Scarborough said, I don't think that's the best Biden ever.
Well, the point is though, if what we are seeing is the best Biden ever, please God, I don't want to see what was worse than that. Because if this is the best, then boy, we in real trouble. Yeah.
Well, but this does bring up though all these big issues we're facing as a country. So it's great that we have this Constitution discussion group that you guys are talking about, and this is the webpage, and these are some of the topics they've covered recently. In case you've been waiting for that history of the vote, is that actually going to be tomorrow? So I think it is. Maybe I know they're going to. There is a class tomorrow. So if you are
tomorrow, yes.
Yeah, but we actually have a video so that people can kind of see what the class is like, and I'll let you guys talk about it a little bit. So, James, can you bring up KOL 2? This is a clip we've also shown on the show before too, and it's Kaylin, who's the mentor or teacher, facilitator of the discussion group, and it shows her sort of guiding the class.
So can we all take our seats, please? This is a really good number of people, and I'm so grateful that you've come out not only to nullify but to recognize that a law can be unconstitutional. Tonight we are doing the 5th in a series.
So anyway, so that's the class, and I've certainly attended.
She's awesome.
Galen Peterson.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I've only gone to this for maybe a few months. You guys, it sounds like you've been doing this for a while. So tell us a little bit about, I guess, the progress you guys have had and what you've seen in this class.
You want to start, or you want me to?
Well, I think you actually went to like one of, because of course it started very small, and Caitlin probably has talked about this. It started with a couple people in her and David, her husband's home, and then it graduated and grew to like the clubhouse at their home area.
Yeah, their HOA.
And then it got, kind of moved around because it kept growing, and then it would shrink and then grow. And then it was at a place at a friend's clinic in Orangevale that you went and you came home. And, of course, I'm like, that just sounds too educational for me.
Yeah, I think I found what we're looking for, something that can educate us on, a remedy for what we're doing.
Right. So this was like October of 2021.
Yeah.
And so he went, and then came back and reported, and he goes, I think you might want to go. It's pretty interesting. So then I went, and it's like, what? We've got power to, exercise. And so, so then we started going, and then they moved to Epic Bible College, which is where we are at now, this big, beautiful classroom. And we've got a couple screens that we watch the videos. That is like the first 45, 60 minutes of the class, and then we discuss it afterwards. And it's great. It's like we all watch the same movie, but because of our different perspectives, everybody has something different to share, and we learn from each other as well as learning from the materials.
Yeah, like one of the ones I have is right here. This is one of the first ones that I got to do it. And I know you can't read it because it's reversed here, but it's like The Making of America, the Founders' Principles of Liberty, and the Meaning of the Constitution. And this was basically like 10 classes, and had workbooks, and we'd go through this stuff, watch that, cover it, discuss it, because it was great. Because the founders, what they did is they didn't go to a traditional classroom. They would have a teacher, and they would sit around and they would read a book or study something and discuss the heck out of it and figure out, what's the best way to solve this problem. And they would find out there's not just one way. There's a whole bunch of different ways to solve the problem. There's not just one way of solving a problem. So we do a lot of things. Like we were at the tail end of this course right here, which is with Chris Ann Hall. She's a constitutional attorney. And then this last one we're going to be doing, I think there was a total of 6 or 7 different ones that we had. This one is about women's right to vote. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you what exactly, but if you come to this, you're going to be like blown away, because people are like, well, women got the right to vote here. And it's like, when you find out the real truth behind that, you're going to be, most women, I think, are going to be mad, because it's just, you have to come check it out.
Yeah. We don't want to have a spoiler alert.
Spoil it, yeah.
But this class was so good that she showed it last year, and so she's showing it again.
Because people requested it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
The classes are the first and third Thursday of every month from 6 to 8 p.m.
But
at Epic
particular
Bible College.
But this particular class you're talking about the constitutional amendment that gave women the right to vote. When is that particular class going to occur?
I think that's tomorrow, isn't it?
That is September 5th.
Yeah,
Oh,
September 5th,
okay.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the class is free. The free class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and if you're watching on public access,
So,
you're
yeah,
probably
I
seeing
thought
this
it was
after that class, but you're still a week ahead of the of the Constitution Day event.
Yes, yes.
So, but anyways, if you're watching on public access, it was a great class.
Oh man. Yes.
Blew my mind. I tell you, I was like,
yeah, it's just kind of a relativity thing with Einstein, right? Time continuum thing.
How appropriate. How appropriate. Yes.
Yeah.
Wish you could have been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we had a DeLorean, we could go back in time and do the show, or you could go back in time and come to the class. But
Our tunnel twin thing, huh?
yeah, no, they're all great classes.
Part of, I guess, one of the things I wanted to bring up too is that this studying of the Constitution, this definitely is a part of the process of waking up to what your rights are. But then once you find out what your rights are and that they're being trampled on, some people want to take it a step further and go exercise those rights and figure out how to do that. And so you guys have another group as well, and it's called the Safety Committee, I believe, which is it, and it's part of I think you guys are also calling it We the People, or is it part of, or is that sort of what you guys call yourselves when you go to the events? Because we do have Debbie Red Hat was on with us before, and so we did play some video, and I did have a snippet of some of that just so people can see what it is that happens. These groups, they get together and they I don't know, did you want to, I guess, set the stage a little before we show the video as far as kind of what happens in this class and what they're setting up to do?
Yeah, basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to teach people, of course, you got to know your Constitution first. And then we've been taking that and applying it to how do we let our government officials, whether they be at the county, state, or federal level, how do we let them know that we know they're breaking their contract? Mm-hmm. And that's with basically giving them a notice. Okay. This is a way of like, it's kind of like the founding fathers did. I mean, they had all these different things. So when they did the Declaration of Independence, at the very end of that, they listed all the grievances that they had for the past 60 years with the king. And they listed all those things. So what we're doing here is we're doing the same thing. We're listing the things that they're doing wrong. And we know they're doing wrong, and they know they're doing this wrong. And we're telling them, stop doing this. And here, if you don't, within a certain time frame, this is going to be the consequence. So that's what you're going to see right here.
Awesome. Yeah, and this is an example where they went in front of the Sacramento County Board, and it has to do with the upcoming election. So let's show this clip, James. It's KOL 3.
Is Sandy.
Good morning, Chair and Board of Supervisors. My name is Sandy, and I'm here as one of We the People. We thank you for agreeing to be servants of the people, for having taken your oaths of office to uphold and defend the Constitution. We are here in peace to give you notice and instruction so that you and your agents may provide due care. This notice of election maladministration has been given to the California Governor, the California Secretary of State, the California Supreme Court, to the California Senate and Assembly. We are now giving you a copy. In the past 4 years, we have witnessed the form of elections change from one day to an election season without the consent of the people. However, we have learned that the government was never granted any authority to change the ways of elections, not even in times of emergency. Despite adamant claims, there are no instances of election malfeasance, that the election process is to be trusted as certified. We have learned that there are multiple cases of election maladministration, including in the city of Lodi, California, where a council member has been convicted of election fraud. We have included copies of court cases in the notice packets just given to you. Please take notice that the people have assembled together, consulted peaceably by right, and realize that our servants in every state, as well as the federal government, have been led to believe that they are generating the basic rules and terms of elections. However, the people now know that the foundational law in the Constitution are the rules which must be followed with exact due regard.
So it's great to see it all sort of come into action, and we didn't want to show it all because you guys had about 10 minutes of testimony there or something, but you had about 5 members, and they all came in and they all gave complimentary pieces to the argument of what their concerns were about the way that some of the laws are being potentially unconstitutionally changed around elections. So I thought that was a really powerful example of putting our rights to action, I guess you might say. So did you guys have any thoughts on that as well? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is where, because I mean, everybody I'm not kidding. Back in 2020, 2021, people were running around, stomping their feet and being all mad and complaining and stuff like that. And we're like, this is doing us no good. We need to learn what we need to do. And this is when we started doing this, the Constitution group, the study group, we started learning more and more, and then we started finding remedies that were built into the Constitution. And that's when we started to do this. And so when government sees the people coming to them like this, organized, well thought, stating the facts, knowing those facts,
Respectful,
just doing it like that, that's scary to them. I mean, really scary to them. They don't like people being calm and telling them you're doing it wrong. Okay, so this was very, very, very empowering. Because again, where does government's power come from? It comes from us. Okay, and we're the ones we're the employers. They're the employee. We need to tell them, employee, you're doing this all wrong. If you keep doing this, you're fired. Okay, because again, I mean, if somebody is doing something wrong in government and they know they're doing it wrong and they're continuing to do it wrong, in the Constitution, they call it treason. So what is one of the highest crimes you could commit against the Constitution is treason, which is a death penalty. So I would think that they would take this very seriously, but we're going to find out. Okay, that's what's going to happen down the road here. So that's, again, we're just doing this small increment. I mean, it took our founding fathers 60 years of petitioning, of doing this with the king before they finally just say, that's enough. I don't think that's going to come to that here. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to break into a war like that, but that's what they had to do back then. So I think we should be able to do this peacefully and in a way that they know it's like, you can't keep doing this. You're done.
Well, and one thing I was going to say is, it seems like just real quick before I forget, I just think of an analogy. So for so many decades, we've been playing this game and nobody has read the rule book, or they've taken the rule book away from us. So we're expected to play this game and they've got the rule book. And so, of course, we're going to lose the game if we don't know the rules and how to play it. The Constitution is that rule book.
Yeah.
So what I was going to ask is okay, when you present your case, present your information to the board of supervisors or whoever you present it to, if they don't respond within the 15 days or 20 days or 30 days or whatever it is the deadline is, what is the next step? What do you guys, is it you take it to court, or what happens next?
Well, again, they had 15 days to respond. And again, it says if you're not responding, you're basically saying that this is true and accurate and you're liable for this now. So yes, the next step would be court.
And or there's other affidavits. Debbie Red Hat and Sandy that you saw there, they have been taking deep dives into studying this whole arena.
In the process.
Yeah. And so there's ways to find or sign affidavits on the jot forms that they created on the website. But it all starts with, number one, becoming aware that we have a rule book out there. And then number two, learning about it. And that's where these discussion classes, or there's all kinds of classes online. If you can't come to Epic Bible College on Thursday, there's a whole lot of other resources out there that you can access.
Yeah, like John Birch Society, Liberty First University, theamericanview.com. The other one I showed here was the National Center for Constitutional Studies. These are all things that you can do these online yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's funny. You guys had mentioned a couple of things. One, the idea that, hey, look, there's this rule book. And, one of the things I guess that maybe gives them some of this authority that they really don't have maybe is the fact that they keep expanding the rule book, right? And so you look at that Constitution, that's 7 articles, and then we have 27 amendments, I think it is, or let me see how many.
27.
Yeah,
27. That's correct.
Exactly. So we got 7 articles with 27 amendments. That's not that daunting, and yet you look at there's so many rules. In fact, one of the Supreme Court justices recently, Gorsuch, just wrote a book called "Overruled: the Human Cost of All This Too Much Law," I think is what he said. And the fact that we don't even know how many criminal, how many criminal laws there are on the books. I can't remember. He had that quote that was in one of the discussions he had where about the book, where it's gotten so voluminous that we just don't even, most people have no idea even if they're in violation of the law in a lot of these cases, because they've tried to expand the rule book so that we just have to have faith in the government and what they're telling us, like they've infantilized us, like we're children and they're the parent and we just have to listen to them and do what they say.
Exactly.
Well, and again, there's common law, which is what our founders basically founded everything on, is common law. Common law was supposed to be understood by everybody. It was in plain language that anybody could understand. That's common law. Now, today we have what's called judicial law. Judicial law is confusing, can be arbitrary. It depends upon who's ruling on it. I mean, again, it's a tremendously arduous, type of law that makes people go like, do I got to go hire an attorney so I can understand this stuff? Well, yeah, we want you to go get an attorney because, you won't be able to understand any of this stuff. But common law, everybody understood. Mm-hmm. And that's what we had in our country for, I'm going to say, probably 50 to maybe 75 years. And then it started morphing into this judicial law. And that is not where we want to be.
Well, and there's things that are called positive laws and non-positive laws. There's just so much. And there's, like I think it said at the very, very beginning, there's legal and there's lawful. And there's so much out there that we just don't know until you start digging.
Well, it gets to the point where the rule book is so big, nobody can hope to know it all, in which case nobody really knows what your rights are at that point, other than to go back to that Constitution, which is why maybe this is so important, because that at least that's a accessible chunk that people can understand in their lives and then question, hey, where do you get the authority to do all these other things you claim you have the authority to do?
And you're just talking about how large that rule book have become, the volume of laws at the federal level, state level. I think somebody wrote, this is not my original thought, somebody wrote an article that on average, a citizen of the United States is committing 3 felonies a day and not even aware of it. I mean, this is horrible when you think about it. That means the federal government could always find something to charge you with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's pretty frustrating. Well, it's funny, early on in the conversation, you had mentioned, I guess that, there's some people who just want to tear up the Constitution or ignore it and rewrite it. And so there was actually an interesting clip recently of somebody literally talking about that in a show. In fact, it was a conversation between Dan Crenshaw and Bill Maher, and I actually thought it was kind of interesting because they were talking about one thing, but then they got to talking about the Constitution, and it was interesting to hear Bill Maher just say, I just think we should, rewrite the whole thing, which is, that's kind of the contract that everybody is going on. But this is an interesting little clip, and so I thought I'd show that. James, can you show KNP number 1?
Because there's nowhere in the Constitution that says Congress gets to certify the election. They don't even use that word. This is based on an old 1886 law from the Reconstruction era. It's for a very different situation. We need to get rid of that entire process.
We need to have a full page 1 rewrite of the Constitution. Not that there aren't some great things in it.
We have the oldest Constitution in the world.
Right, and some of it is ridiculous. I live in a state with 40 million people, and I get 2 senators, and the Dakota Territory gets 4.
But it sort of goes back to that point of, yes, it's changeable. It's a living document. We can't amend it. But some people, if they had their way, would want to just completely toss the whole thing up in the air. And that's why, it really is, I guess, important that we think about this a little bit, I guess. So do you guys have any thoughts on
Bill Maher said something. Yeah, I just got to share a funny. I saw a T-shirt comment on what Bill Maher said. The T-shirt said, we don't need to rewrite the Constitution. We need to reread it.
Go back to Bill Maher's, his saying, he says, well, the Dakota territories get 2 senators each, and I live in a place that's got 40 million. Well, one of the things they debated in the Constitutional Convention was that what would happen to the smaller states if the bigger states with all these population and all this stuff like that, they got control of things. Mm-hmm. So what they did is they said, okay, every state is going to have, this is a check, is basically each state's going to get 2 senators. Doesn't matter how big they are or how small they are or how many their population is, like they get 2 senators because that's going to keep them in check. That's why Bill doesn't understand that, and he doesn't see the brilliance of it. Just like the Electoral College. College,
yes,
no way. It should stay right where it is because it protects the small states against the big states, and we don't want to have that change because then it would become, oh boy, we turn into I don't know what we turn. We turn mob rule pretty much. It's just mob rule.
we'd probably turn into a democracy.
Yeah, we would turn into a
we turn into California. That's what we turn into. Okay? And I live in California, believe me.
Yeah, we do too. So it's like we know that we're in public, supposedly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you know that whole exchange, so it goes back to the part, what you were talking about at the very beginning. The Constitution is essentially a contract. And that's the whole reason why the states joined together, is because they thought they had a contract. And if the contract, then if you say, well, let's change the contract, well, then you have to say, okay, well, that means I can reject the contract if you want to change the contract at that point. And we saw what happened in the Civil War when that happened as well. So it's not like they're saying, hey, if you don't like the way we want to change it, you can leave. They're literally saying, hey, we're going to change it the way we want it, and you're just going to have to deal with it.
And again, that those are extreme times too. What was happening during the Civil War. There was a lot of things going on during the Civil War that we don't know about, and we probably never will. But at the same time, too, what we fought that war about wasn't exactly what we fought the war for. I mean, I think everybody doesn't care what your color is. Everybody should be free.
Yeah, exactly. All wars.
So, and again, most wars are fought for a totally different reason than what they say. We don't hear what it's all about, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I tell you, we are getting close to the end of the show, and that's usually where we do our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And we kind of already did that a little bit with Bill Maher, but I did have one thing, because we are near the end of the show and we're almost out of time. I had a quote from possibly our next president talking about time and the importance of time. So since we're almost out of time, I thought it'd be good to talk about that. So James, can you play KNP number 2?
It is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time.
We're going to hold ourselves to those deadlines around time.
I think you have to give Kamala a little bit of credit here, okay? Because what she just did was tell us that there's this new phenomena for deadlines. All of life, throughout all the history of time, we knew about deadlines only measured by time. She just told us there's something else. There's some other metric.
It's time to learn about deadlines and their importance in time.
Yes, right. So we there's some other metric that she haven't yet fully disclosed it, because she don't like to give us all her positions. She haven't yet disclosed it, but she told us in her brilliance, don't underestimate her brilliance, that there's some other metric other than time that we should measure deadlines by. This is really beautiful by this woman. God help us.
I don't know if
can I say something real quick here, Jason?
Sure.
Hey, can I say anything? Okay, because again, think about it. The president has really only 6 delegated authorities. And one of those authorities is to negotiate contracts with other countries. So if you were going to negotiate a contract with somebody, do you want, and again, this is the only two we're really getting to pick from pretty much, is do you want Trump negotiating that contract, or do you want Kamala Harris negotiating that contract? Think about it.
Yeah. Well, certainly she talked about how important time was in setting deadlines to have those discussions.
We must have
in time.
Did you hear what the woman said? She said we must have deadlines, that metric, deadlines around time. So there's deadlines around something else too. Okay, so God, we're trying to get it all straight here. Her brilliance will come out to one of these days. Don't worry.
Well, since we are just about out of time,
maybe not.
Well, since we are just about out of time, I figured now would be a great time for you guys to tell us any last thoughts you had on Constitution Day and anything else that was on your mind before we leave the show. Anything else you want to let the audience know about what's going on? So here's the flyer again for Constitution Day, just so everybody sees it. September 15th, noon to 4. And I'll let you guys, kind of have the last word to talk about this stuff.
One other important thing that we didn't mention that people that come are going to receive is just connecting with other people. That is so huge. We were denied that 4 years ago. And this is a great opportunity to connect with other people in your community that feel the same way, maybe think similarly. They don't have to think identically, but think similarly. And it's a chance to lock arms together, and there's strength in numbers. So it's also empowering for you to know you're not the only one out there.
And also that we want people to know that they have the power to nullify or just say, no, I'm not doing that, because you don't have that authority. And here's why. And you can point specifically to that Constitution in your hand where that is. And they can't refute that. They could still arrest you and everything like that. But again, they can't refute that, because when you bring that up later, it's like, it's a done thing. They know that they have no power, and they're just, they're bluffing. It's all a bluff. It's a house of cards. So come join everybody and enjoy the time together. We're going to have a great time at the Constitution Day, second annual Constitution Day celebration. In Folsom.
And I can't emphasize that enough too, how important that is to be around other people, especially when you're in a place like California where the government's gotten so large that it can make you feel so small as an individual. It's great to be able to get around other people who realize maybe that there's something's a little off with this arrangement. So I think it's a great thing you guys are doing up there, and hopefully people will get out there to check it out. And by the way, if you're watching the show and you're wondering what you can do in your community, hey, if you're in this community in Sacramento area, go check that event out. But if you're somewhere farther out, this is the kind of stuff you can do in your community too. You get some of the ideas. In fact, one of the cool things I saw about the Constitution Discussion Group is that they are trying to help other communities as well. So if you want to reach out to them and you say, hey, I'd like to start something like this in my community, they are willing to help you try and set something up and grow this movement out. So definitely reach out if you're sitting around in your community and you're thinking, what can I do? So that's what we like to leave you with at the beginning or at the end of every show. Before you get to the next show, think about it. You got like a week. Think about what can you do in your community to advance the ball for liberty. So thanks again so much for joining us, and thanks for watching. Until next week, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Liberty and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.